Hello mga convincers at mga investees. Ngayon ay Tuesday na naman at may klase tayo sa Ateneo. Kaya join kayo sa ating pera-aralan ngayon at pag-aaralan natin ang development finance. So sa ating development finance ngayon, ang pag-uusapan natin ay mga guarantees. Paano ba nag-work ang mga guarantees? No? Tapos pag-uusapan din natin debt forgiveness, debt cancellation o mga debt swaps. Tapos, pag-uusapan din natin kung ano ang migration and remittances. At pagkatapos niyan, pag-uusapan din natin ang financial behavior of OFWs. So, yan ang ating pag-uusapan ngayong Tuesday, no? May 11. At syempre, dahil ako ay nagtuturo sa Ateneo, hindi po pwedeng ako po ay mag-isa lang ngayon. No? I asked my students to join me para meron po tayong kausap at hindi tayo nag-iisa no, sa ating talakayan ngayong gabi. So, i-welcome natin si Joan, si Jerica, at saka si Yani. Ayan. So, i-introduce nila ang isa't isa, pero kasi mukhang close-knit itong grupong ito. Magkakakilala na daw sila before. So, hello sa inyo.
Hello po, sir.
Hi, sir.
Ayan, okay. So, can you introduce each other?
Okay. So, to my left or to my right is Jerica. She is a student from a higher batch, and she is my groupmate, and she is also from QC.
Yes.
Okay. Hi, Jerica.
Hello, everyone. So next we have Joan. She's on top. She is a second year AV Development Studies student, and she is my groupmate also.
Okay.
And then, last but not least, there's Yani Francisco. He is my batchmate in development studies. Fun fact, he was my very first seatmate in my very first major class.
Wow, anong face-to-face pa tayo?
Opo.
Parang no? Parang ang tagal-tagal na. So are all of you graduating this year?
No, sir.
Okay, so si Jerica is graduating, si Yani and si Joan?
Second year po.
Okay, ang babata ha. Kasi usually I have mga third year or fourth year in my class. Okay, medyo napa-advance kayo. Sige. So, pag-uusapan natin tonight, as I mentioned, our topic would be on guarantees. Okay, so unahin natin ang guarantees. Yan. So, ang guarantees, ito ay promise of indemnification up to a specified amount in the case of default or non-performance of an asset. Sige. So, what have you learned so far about guarantees?
I guess.
Raise your hand. Go, Jerica.
Well, you can apply guarantees in a non-developmental aspect and in a developmental aspect. So in a non-developmental aspect, you can apply your definition. So it's a compensation for any loss occurred in the case of default or non-performance of or failure to meet loan repayments. But in the developmental guarantees, since we are centered on social development, guarantees are very important so that we can establish or mobilize private resources and deploy investments to improve the socio-economic system in developing countries.
Yes, so tama 'yon, ano. So you dove into development guarantees immediately. So isa itong special category ng official guarantees backing up projects that promote the development and welfare of developing countries, no. So usually sa guarantees, no, in the private sector, usually banks, for example, they would ask for guarantees for people asking for a loan na medyo mababa ang kanilang credit score, no? At ano yung main function ng isang guarantor? Sa tingin niyo, ano yung main function ng guarantor? Si Jerica nagsasalita ka yata pero you're on mute.
Sorry. It's basically to assume the loss
Uh-huh.
that one has made, so that the 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 one who's in debt
Mm-hmm. Okay. So you
too broke, or
So you absorb the loss for that. Would you be willing to absorb to be a guarantor to someone?
yeah, it depends. It depends.
So tanungin natin si Yani. Yani, who would you be willing to guarantee?
I think it would be first people I would trust, specifically relatives. So I think, so I can make sure that they properly use that money and they are able to utilize that money.
Okay. Sige nako, ingat ka dyan ha. Maraming mga nasisirang relasyon dahil sa mga garantiya ng mga ginagaranti ng utang sa mga kamag-anak. Okay? Wawarningan na kita, Yani, ha? So learning yan. I hope that when you get older, you will remember that. I'm not saying that you don't do it. I'm just saying that you have to be very, very careful. Okay? So, yun, ano. So I have a question for the three of you. Can you explain the multiplier effect of a guarantee in the development guarantee context? Paano parang nagkakaroon ng mas malaking tulong yung guarantee, no, compared to other financial instruments?
So I can start, and then my group mates can add. Yes. So to start, I guess the importance of multiplier effect is that given the limited capital, what it does, it extends, parang it extends its usage para hindi agad maubos yung capital mo, and at the same time help more people when it comes. So that's a basic definition. My group mates can add.
Okay. Si John, can you add?
Opo. So, an example po would be Phil Guarantee. So, they were given 20 billion pesos for social housing projects. Now, it could have been possible po that they fund the project directly with that fund, but in order to really stretch it out, they instead partnered with other financial institutions. Tas sila na po yung mag-provide ng financial support. Tas kung sakali po may mga tao na di po pwedeng ibalik yung loan po nila, sila na lang po yung magka-cover doon, if my understanding is right po.
Yes, tamang-tama naman, no? Okay, so Phil Guarantee nga is a very good example for that. So they were given 20 billion pesos, and now they're using that money to guarantee loans from financial institutions. So pwedeng bank, no? Pwedeng government financial institutions. And then, so instead of using their money, the banks are now going to use their own money. So yung pera ngayon ni Phil Guarantee, mas marami siyang mag-guarantee na mga projects kasi hindi naman niya kailangan na gamitin directly yung pera niya. So magkakaroon ng multiplier effect kasi the key here is for Phil Guarantee to also select the financial institutions it will guarantee dahil yung collection efficiency, yung repayment rates ng mga financial institutions nito, how they perform will affect how much money will be decapitalized, no, from Phil Guarantee. So for example, 99% yung collection rate ng bank, so 1% lang yung babayaran ng Phil Guarantee in terms of loan losses. Yan. Okay. So in the Philippines, nabanggit nyo nga na mayroon tayong meron tayong Philippine Guarantee Corporation, no? Ito yung mga guarantee mechanisms in the Philippines. Pero ang pinakasimple actually at ang pinakasikat ay ang Philippine Deposit Insurance Corporation. Nagbibigay din yan ng guarantee. Tapos ang pinakabago natin is the Credit Surety Fund Cooperative Act. So let's go one by one, no, with this one. So sa PDIC, PDIC provides guarantees to deposits up to 500,000 pesos per entity. No? So, ang ibig sabihin ng entity, any juridical personality yan. So, pwedeng corporation, association, or pwedeng natural person. Basta up to 500,000 pesos lang. So, pag maglalagay ka, for example, in a rural bank, the PDIC will cover your deposit up to 500,000 pesos. And that's the reason why I like to put my time deposits in rural banks rather than in commercial banks. Because rural banks, they give higher interest rate talaga. Kasi sa commercial bank, hindi mo na maramdaman. Parang 0.1%, no? So it's not even 1%, it's 0.1%. No, for regular savings deposit. So, talong-talo sa inflation. While in rural banks, they give as much as 4 to 6% per annum. And that's the reason why mas gusto ko doon dahil covered naman ng PDIC up to 500,000. So, ang ginagawa ko, naglalagay ako ng 500,000 pesos sa maraming rural banks, no, para naka-spread out. And of course, one of the main reasons also why I like placing deposits in rural banks is because rural banks, they lend out to micro and small enterprises in the countryside. Hindi katulad sa mga commercial banks, di ba? Na kapag nagbigay tayo ng deposit natin sa mga commercial banks, napupunta yan actually sa mga malalaking korporasyon. So, mayaman na yung mga yun di ba? Mas gusto ko talaga dito tayo sa developmental side. So with PDIC, ang naging epekto niya sa akin ay nagkaroon ako ng confidence in our banking system even with the rural banks, no? Kahit sa mga maliliit na bangko. Dahil, yun nga, up to 500,000 ay covered naman. Pare-pareho yan. Regardless, you are a commercial bank, a thrift bank, a rural bank, meron 500,000 pesos na deposit, na guarantee. Okay? Kayo ba, meron na ba kayong bank account?
Sir, I have a question po, if that's okay, before we answer.
Sure.
Can you give po an example of a rural bank?
Oh, okay. Taga Manila ka kasi, no?
Yeah. BPI, BDO lang alam natin.
Kita mo. Pag pumunta ka sa probinsya, marami diyan. Like for me, where I grew up, there's Rural Bank of Madela. That's in Quirino Province. Usually, nakapangalan siya sa bayan kung nasaan yung rural bank na yon. So, merong Rural Bank of Montalban, Rural Bank of... actually, meron ng Rural Bank of Makati. Dati, Rural Bank of Makati, pero Bank of Makati na siya. Thrift Bank na siya. Mayroon ding mga Rural Bank of San Leonardo, Rural Bank of Bayombong, mga ganyan. No? So marami siya. There's about, if I have my statistics right, there are about 571 rural banks all over the Philippines. So pag nagbakasyon ka, Jerica, sa rural areas, mag-open ka ng bank account doon. Makakatulong ka doon sa local economy. Ayan. Okay, so yan ang that's rural bank. Pero yung tanong ko, sino sa inyo yung mayroon ng bank account? Raise your hand. Ayan, okay. Alam niyo ba na senyales ng pagiging burgis? Hindi, joke lang. Senyales na hindi ka mahirap kapag ikaw ay may bank account. And it never fails, ha? Like, pag sa Ateneo ko to ginagawa sa mga estudyante ko, I ask my students whether they have bank accounts and they would say nga, lahat nga ay meron. Parang wala pa akong namalayan na nagsabi na wala siyang bank account. And yun, financial inclusion is very, very important for development because that's how we access the financial markets, no? Doon tayo nagkakaroon ng transaction and relationship with the banks. Ayan. Oh, ito pala si JM, ang dami niyang nilagay. Si JM Marcelino, kaklase niyo ba? Ang dami One Network Bank, East West Rural Bank, Card Bank, of course, favorite ko yan. Ayan. Oh, si Card Bank ay sa Laguna yan, Yani, tama ba? Oo,
Hindi
yan.
ko masyadong familiar, sir.
Ako, meron yan, Johnny, no? Kunin mo yung card SME or card bank, yan. Rural Bank of Dipolog also. So these are from my, from our viewers who are joining us. Ayan, okay. So another one is still guarantee. Ito na yung sinabi ninyo kanina, no? So it supports trade, investments, exports, and micro small enterprises. Para sa, of course, to develop the priority sectors of our economy. So yan siya, no? Tapos yung field guarantee actually ay amalgamation siya ng various government programs. Actually, naapektuhan nga ako nito on a negative way. Positive for the whole nation, negative on me. Kasi we used to have a program with the last one, no, Industrial Guarantee and Loan Fund, or IGLF. Because this guarantee fund used to be lodged with the Development Bank of the Philippines, and yung earnings ng fund na yon, doon kami nakaka-access ng loans from the Development Bank of the Philippines at a concession rate. Ayan. So what does a concession rate mean? Sige nga, pagpakitang gilas kayo. Google na, Google. Yung concession. Yes, John.
So basically, concession rate means like the value of the debt is reduced, and as well as the interest rate. So it's easier to pay back.
Yeah. So it could be, tama naman, ano? So it could be the principal or the interest that reduced. But on our case, dahil market-based pa rin siya, the interest rate was reduced. No? For that time, when the interest rate charged to most micro and small enterprises are about 9 to 12%. Kami, we were charged at 4%. At tapos, nung kinover na merge na ng government natin lahat ng guarantee program. So nawala yun. So bumalik kami sa market rate. Pero pa rin, maganda yung market rate na binigay sa amin because our credit rating is high. So mga nasa 6% yung nakukuha namin sa kanila. Ayan. Okay. So that's that's our field guarantee program. Tapos, we also have our Credit Surety Fund, no? This is the Credit Surety Fund Cooperative Act. So it applies to cooperatives. And why cooperatives? Because cooperatives are usually the ones that have difficulty accessing funds from the formal financial markets. So it aims to increase the creditworthiness of micro, small, and medium enterprises. And financial institutions lending to MSMEs or cooperatives can use the Credit Surety Fund guarantee as collateral. So parang ako, micro and small medium enterprise, tapos wala akong collateral, gusto kong huminang, for example, sa BPI, sa Banco de Oro, or sa kung ano pang mga commercial banks dyan, then I can actually use the Credit Surety Fund as collateral. But I have to be a member there, and kailangan kong mag-apply at mag-comply sa kanilang mga policies. Ayan. Okay? So, yun. And the Credit Surety Fund is also established by various actors. So, yung cooperative, siya yung nagli-lead doon. Tapos, local government units, dapat maglagay din ng pera doon. Mga donor agencies and government financial institutions. And ang BSP, pwedeng oo, pwedeng hindi maglagay. Pero dapat ay informed siya doon. Ayun. Okay? So, that's the Credit Surety Fund. Okay, so meron akong tanong ulit sa inyo. No? So, why is a guarantee considered a market-based solution? When do you say that something is market-based ba?
I think, sir, when it relies on supply and demand.
Okay, so pag sorry, can you come again?
When it relies on supply and demand for goods and services.
Okay, so I think you mean kapag supply and demand, that would be more on there would be a market and there would be buyers, no?
Yes, sir.
So yun yung ibig mong sabihin doon. Okay.
Yes, sir.
And so my buyer at saka my supplier, pero what makes it market-based? Ano yung medium of exchange? Ano yung gamit para magkaroon ng exchange?
Pero, sir.
Yeah, of course, 'di ba? Kailangan ng pera. And dun sa exchange ng pera na yon, what makes it market-based really is mayroong tubo, may kita, may patong, 'di ba? Sa mga Chinese, tinatawag nila, kailangan may patong. And that becomes the market-based solution. So even with even with our example kanina na government program, na si Philippine Guarantee Corporation would be providing guarantee to this financial institution. What actually happens there is, so magbibigay ng guarantee, si Phil guarantee, no? May program siya. Tapos sabihin niyo kay BDO, BDO, magpa-loan ka for a certain micro small enterprise, and I will provide guarantee for that. So pag nagbigay siya ng guarantee, hindi yon libre. Okay? Ang mangyayari, si commercial bank will charge a guarantee fee to the micro and small enterprise. So the guarantee fee usually ranges from 1% to 2%. At yung guarantee fee na yon, babayaran ni micro and small enterprise dahil wala siyang collateral. So mapupunta yun ngayon kay Phil guarantee. Okay? Tapos, iipunin na yun yung Phil guarantee, it becomes part of its funds, at dun niya kukunin yung pangbayad kay commercial bank kapag nagkaroon ng default or loan losses. And kapag maganda ang performance, walang default, masaya si Phil guarantee kasi meron siyang kita. Okay? So, and that's the reason why our guarantees are market-based solutions. Okay? So, just to summarize our discussion on guarantees, so ang credit guarantee schemes, third-party risk mitigation to lenders. So, may third party, so kasi may borrower, may lender, may pangatlong party na nagbibigay ng guarantee para magkaroon ng confidence si lender na mag-extend ng loan kay borrower. Okay? And they absorb portion of lenders' losses on loans due to the borrower's default. Tapos, it can also serve as substitute for collateral. Diba? And sino sa inyo may credit card na? Wala. Okay, very good. No? Congratulations, nanay at nanay na hindi nagbigay ng credit card extension sa kanilang mga anak. Otherwise, siguro, madalas kayo sa Lazada, add to cart na yan. Ayan. Pero usually, for, when you graduate and wala pa kayong credit history and you want to get a credit card, usually nag-ask ng guarantor, no, from your parents, yung credit card company. Another way of giving guarantee is sabihin nila, maglagay ka ng a certain amount in a bank account. Let's say that you put in 30,000 pesos. Hindi mo gagalawin yon, and that would serve as guarantee to your credit card. And then as your relationship grows with the credit card company, then eventually mawawala yung guarantee na yon. Okay? And may fee na binabayaran. Kaya ito talaga ay usually may market-based siya kasi may fee na binabayaran. Okay? So, let me show you my own experience in terms of using guarantees. No? At magsisegue na ito medyo sa migration and remittances natin. No? Very, very slight lang. Okay. So, SEDP is a group of social enterprises that I established in 2004. And in 2009, we started mobilizing social investments. At ito yung model na ginawa namin from 2009 to 2013. Okay? So, we have what we call a sustainable investment fund. So what we do here is we have our migrants as social investors, and we provide capacity building for them. No? So we provide financial literacy training to these OFWs. Okay? Tapos, yung migrant ngayon, kapag katapos namin silang ma-train, they become interested in our model and they invest in us. Okay? Tapos, what we do now is we get that investment, we pull it together, and then we invest it in social enterprises and microfinance institutions all over the Philippines. Okay? And with that, we are able to provide financial services and financial literacy to by the end of 2013, siguro mga 500,000 micro and small enterprises because of this system. And aside from that, we also provide capacity building to the organizations, so the social enterprises and microfinance institutions. So, ang mangyayari niyan, magbabayad yung mga micro enterprises dun sa institutions, then the social enterprises will pay us, and now we also pay the migrants. Okay, so that's the return on investments. So we were having a hard time doing this before on our own, and then a Dutch NGO was able to see our model at sabi nila, parang okay itong mga ginagawa ng mga ng organization na to. So they provided us with a guarantee fund. Okay? So we opened a guarantee fund for migrant investments and placed it in an escrow account with Metro Bank. Tapos itong guarantee na to, nakalabas siya, no? Nasa Metro Bank siya, but it's guaranteeing the investment of the migrants to us. So to build the confidence of the market. Yan. So that's that's my experience on the Sustainable Investment Fund. So this is the first phase, 2009 to 2013. And with this, we were able to mobilize 10 million social investments from the migrants, and we were able to leverage 100 million pesos in loans from commercial banks. So parang nakikita ng mga banks na nag-grow yung equity base namin, and that gave them also confidence to lend to us. Okay? Tapos, after that, so this is our social investment model naman from 2014 to 2019. So, natapos na yung Ford Aid program natin dito. No? So, it's also the same thing that's happening. We still provide financial literacy to OFWs. We invest to microfinance institutions and social enterprises to reach out the micro enterprises themselves. Tapos, yung returns pupunta sa magbabayad itong mga micro enterprises sa mga social enterprises natin. Tapos mababayaran tayo, and then we give the returns to our social investors. But this time, wala na yung Ford Aid. So that's the beauty of that's one of the impacts of our relationship with Ford Aid using guarantees. So parang na-build yung confidence ng mga migrants to invest in us in such a way na kahit wala na yung guarantee, they still continued investing in us. So, yon. What do you think of that model?
Sir, napakaganda kasi ang daming naka-access ng pera, and malaki rin yung investment coming from immigrants from other OFWs kasi yun nga, ang laki rin ng pumapasok na pera na kino-convert to peso. So, ang galing lang niya kasi nadi-decentralize yung pera at nabibigyan yung mga nangangailangan para makatulong sa mga maliliit na businesses.
Oo, di ba? Happy. So, hindi lahat ng mga, kasi usually there is a perception na kapag ang ginawa mo ay na business model ay pagtulong sa mga mahihirap, no? Ganyan. Ang perception ng marami ay di ba? Parang walang pera diyan, magiging mahirap ka diyan kasi charity 'yan, di ba? So what I'm trying to show you is no, mayroong paraan using market-based solutions to be able to help out, become a social entrepreneur. Kasi yung pagbe-business, madali lang yun. Pero pag social entrepreneur, ay kaya mong mag-business, and at the same time, you protect the environment and you are also able to you are also able to um you're also able to uh, help the poor, no, or eliminate poverty. So yun. How about you, Joanne? What do you think?
So it's a really smart model. I don't think I would, like, given what I know, I wouldn't have been able to picture, like, structuring the program in that way. So,
Aha.
ganun pa ng SEDP.
Actually, yan din, no, maganda na nasasabi mo yan ngayon, Joanne, na parang, hindi ko nga maiisip na ganyan siya masa-structure. Of course, when I was your age also, I didn't also know how to do it, di ba? Parang, when it happened, so parang when I worked, I was able to gain skills and knowledge with the experience and mentoring that I got from the organizations that I worked with. Tapos, as opportunities came, doon mo nagagamit yung base na itinuro ng Ateneo na critical thinking and creative thinking na, okay, pwede pala to, ganyan, ganyan. Kasi initially, Ford Aid wanted to give us a grant. So, di ba? So, ano ba yung grant? Ano to? Let's ask si Jerica. Why do you think I opted for a guarantee instead of a grant?
Sir, kasi pag grant, this is just my guess from everything that we've tackled. Pero I think grant po kasi parang kailangan may maibalik ka at some point. Pag guarantee hindi.
Okay. Sige. Actually, baliktad, di ba? yung grant, wala ka nang kailangang ibalik kasi ibibigay niya sa'yo yun, di ba? Pero tinanggihan ko siya kasi sabi ko, bibigyan mo ako ng pera? Hindi naman ako Miss Universe. Hindi ako ganun kaganda para bigyan mo ako ng pera, di ba? So, sabi ko, bakit, di ba? Ayoko ng strings attached. I'm sure, sabi ko, you want something from me, that's why you're giving me money. So, let's be clear, para mas maganda ang expectations natin. Let's just create an innovative scheme. And I said, why don't you just provide us with a guarantee and then isupport ninyo yung training programs namin with the migrant. So, rather than giving us with a grant, give us a guarantee. Para, kasi kapag guarantee, naku, 1 taon lang yun. Diba? Tapos na. Tapos, so, dito, 5 years yung naging program namin with a guarantee. And then, we were also given a loan, no, from them that we were able to pay in 5 years. So, maganda yung grant, pero mas gusto ko yung hindi libre. Kasi nakakatakot kung anong libre. Di ba? Tatanong ko talaga kaagad, bakit libre? Anong gusto mo sa akin? Gusto mo ba yung puri ko? Di ba? Ayoko. Hindi, my puri is not for sale. Di ba? So, yun. Okay. So, with this one, nung wala na yung wala na yung ating guarantee mechanism. So, siguro people were expecting na, okay, bababa na yung confidence. But the opposite actually happened. We were able to mobilize 30 million in investments, no, in social investments. Tapos, naka-leverage din tayo ng 250 million pesos in loans, no, for our program. So this is 2014 to 2018. So to be continued mamaya yung natin when we talk about our OFWs na, because they really play a very big role in this development finances scheme that we are implementing. No? Okay. So, pag-usapan naman natin ang debt relief. So, ano ba yung debt relief?
So basically, sir, if a country or an institution can't pay back, basically the entity who gave that loan would help them, in a way, like, pay back. So it can, because like you can't really just cancel the loan and then tada, that's it. So it can come in many forms. There's rescheduling. So that means delaying payment of the loan. There's also refinancing in the case that the institution who borrows money isn't in like a good economic situation to be able to pay back at like a certain rate. And then there's also buyback po, where the the institution who gives that loan will absorb that loan. And then there's also debt swaps po.
Oo, ayan. So ang daming mga klase ano ng mga debt relief. So let's just give our viewers no a parang definitions of this one so pinag-aaralan natin. So actually debt relief kasi we're talking about development finance. So ito yung mga when we talk about debt relief at the development finance level, ito yung mga utang ng mga mahihirap na bansa sa mga mayayaman na bansa na pinapatawad. At mayroong partial patawad at mayroong full patawad, 'di ba? So ito 'yon, no? So debt relief it's also called a debt cancellation. So pwede itong partial or total remission of debts, especially those owed by developing countries to external creditors. Okay? So tapos meron ding gaya ng nabanggit kanina ni John, no? Meron tayong tinatawag na debt swap where it involves an exchange of debt for another entity in order to write off the money owed. And again, I'm actually very fortunate to have worked for an organization na free debt swap arrangement. No? So the two famous debt swap arrangements in the Philippines are the Foundation for a Sustainable Society Incorporated, where I work, and Foundation for the Philippine Environment. So basically, ang nangyayari dito sa debt swap ay the country, the rich country cancels cancels its debt to a developing country. Pero kunwari, dito sa Foundation for a Sustainable Society sa FSSI, ang nangyari dito, may utang tayo sa Swiss government about $42 million, I think, if I'm correct, no? And then, ang nangyari, finorgive yung kalahati. So sabi, okay, we will partially forgive 50% of that, okay? And then from that 50%, yung remaining 50%, the government of the Philippines will still have to pay, quote-unquote, pay that, pero it will not go to Switzerland anymore as payment, but it will go as an endowment fund to the Foundation for a Sustainable Society. And yung endowment fund na yan ngayon ang gagamitin natin para pangtulong sa mga proyekto na tinatawag namin na eco-enterprise, no, or eco-enterprise. So kailangan triple bottom lines, economic, social, and environmental goals ay mayroon. So I was when I left there, I was a senior program officer, and I was also able to take up my masters because of FSSI. No? At masaya yung experience ko dito because I was able to widen my network. Okay? So my first job was on the technical side to learn the skills in development. Tapos the second one was I became a fund manager of sorts for development financing. So kapag ikaw kasi may pera, ikaw ang nilalapitan, di ba? Kahit hindi naman ako may-ari, pero ako kasi yung ako yung nagsasabi kung okay ba to pondohan or okay ba mag-invest dyan. So I was able to build my network with FSSI. And up to now, I always say na maraming salamat sa FSSI for the training and experience it has given me. Ayan. Yung FPE naman ay movement or project ng World Wildlife Fund. And it's debt swap with USAID, with the United States. No? May utang tayo. So nagkaroon din ng pondo, yung Foundation for the Philippine Environment. Yan. Okay. So, yon. So, tapos yung default, okay, ang default naman ay technical term used to refer to an event when a country could no longer meet its repayment obligations to its creditors. Meron akong tanong sa inyo, controversial. Has the Philippines been in default? Sino gustong sumagot?
Sige, ako sir.
Okay, so Jerry ka daw.
Oh, yes, sir. During the Marcos regime in 1983, we weren't able to pay our debts in US private banks. So yes, due to a lot of reasons. Joan, you want to expound?
Okay. Go ahead, Joan.
Um, Sir, first off, the GDP to that ratio was really like they really were wide. So like basically, sir, the reason why the GDP to that ratio was significant in was because like, GDP is what the country produces, and then the debt was what the country owed. And because the disparity between those numbers were so wide, it really reflected how we couldn't pay back the debt. And
Mhm.
then also, the foreign reserve pot at the time was really depleted. The administration really spent a lot of dollars. It went from 50% to like 4%,
Ah,
3 to 4%. And yeah, so how can we pay if we don't have dollars, diba po? And
mhm.
also, just because of bad governance, for the lack of a better word po. Opo.
Yan, taray naman. Actually, lahat ng mga points na sinabi mo ay correct. Ano? So, we had our Philippine default in 1983. So, 90-day, we asked for a 90-day moratorium from our creditors in the United States at that time. At tama ka, this was during the Marcos era. At our debt to GDP ratio was 93%. So that means ang laki-laki talaga ng utang natin, ano? Yung production natin and of value of goods and services na nagagawa natin sa Pilipinas, our GDP, is almost equal to our debt, no? And 3.5% yung foreign reserve natin. So hindi tayo makapagbayad, walang dolyar no na pambayad. And tama, bad governance. So napunta sa corruption, katulad ng Bataan Nuclear Power Plant, gastos-gastos na ang dami-daming ginastos pero wala namang na-produce. So hindi maganda. Okay? So yan. Okay, so punta tayo sa remittances and migration. Okay, so remittances and ang remittance, ito yung portion ng migrant workers' earnings sent back home to their families, no? And ito rin ay money that foreign-born workers send to their relatives and or communities abroad. Sikat na sikat tayong mga Pilipino, no, na bilang mga remittance senders and remittance receivers. So, ang mga remittances, pwede itong cash, pwede itong food, medicines, and clothing. Kilala ito bilang bayan box, no, sa atin. Meron bang do you have OFW members in your family? So si Joanne meron, si Jerica at Yani wala. So Joanne, sino yung OFW in your family?
Yung tito ko po, nasa US.
Okay. Anong work ni Tito? Hulaan ko. Nurse.
Hindi pa. But actually, sir, I do have other family members who are nurses. It's pretty common po.
Mm-hmm. Actually, ako, lahat ng mga kapatid ko, nurses. Kaloka, diba? So ako na lang yung hindi Pilipino. Sila ay either Australian or Americans. Ito yung my least powerful passport. So sad. Pero hindi pa ako nakaka-experience ever ng balikbayan box. Naka-experience ka na ba ng balikbayan box, Joanne?
Opo, pag Christmas po, siguro 5 po.
Wow!
Boxes kami.
Limang
For the whole
boxes.
family. Opo.
Ang happy naman. Ako, ayan. Ako yung mga kapatid ko, hindi naman ako sa nanghihingi sa kanila. It's just not necessary. Yun yung siguro. Okay. Tapos, consumer durables, TVs and cars. No? Maraming ang mga, especially in the Middle East or in Japan, nagpapadala sila ng mga appliances na mga tinatapon, no? Na doon. Kasi nagpapalit sila ng newer model. Yun. So, yung basura doon sa atin ay may gamit pa. Tools and equipment, pwede rin yan. Pwede rin ng, dowries and gifts. So, sa atin, wala naman masyado. Savings, initial support for other family migrants, and skills and training. acquired human capital. So these are some kinds of types of remittances. Ako I actually was surprised na, okay, maski pala skills and training ay considered as remittance. No? So parang brain gain. Kasi usually, brain drain, di ba? Ang nakikita natin with migration. Okay, tapos ano yung mga features of remitted funds from the remittance sender to the remittance receiver? So this is actually more stable than other international finance flows. Tayo dito sa Pilipinas, ang mas consistent ang remittance flows natin compared to official development assistance and foreign direct investments. So yung yung remittance natin is equivalent to about 10% of our GDP, and that 10% actually has a very high multiplier rate kasi it fuels consumption. Kapag nagpapadala ng remittance sa mga OFWs, nagagamit yan para sa pagpapaaral, pagbili ng mga goods ng mga businesses, and because of that consumption, we are helping our economy thrive, no? So kaya usually kapag nagkakaroon ng mga disasters, mga ganyan, malakas yung remittance flows papunta sa atin because of our migration. Okay? What else? So it actually match niya yung family requirements, no? So income, smoothing. So ito yung sinasabi nga nila na kapag remittance yung tinignan natin in terms of international finance flows, it actually directly addresses the needs of poor households. Unlike kapag kinompare mo sa official development assistance or foreign direct investments na trickle-down effect yung trickle-down economics yung pinapairal. So ang sinasabi, yung remittance, although this is private money, mas malaki yung developmental impact niya kaysa sa ODAs and FDIs. So, di ba kasi kapag ODA, mga magpa-project pa yan, tapos country-to-country, bilateral agreement or multilateral agreements, and then magagawa ng programa na yung mga mag-i-implement ng programa ay mas ang tataas ang kanilang mga sweldo compared sa ginagawa nila. May mga inefficiencies na ganon, no? Mga foreign direct investments naman, so nag-create ng business, dito sa Pilipinas, for example, a Japanese company will put up a factory here in the Philippines and employ 10,000 Filipinos. Pero yun nga, it only reaches 10,000 Filipino households. Whilst remittances, if we take a look at it, marami talaga siyang natutulungan. Okay, so yun yung isa na sinasabi nito, no? It matches family requirements. Okay. And perception of investors to risk ay may home bias. So if we take a look at it, no, in the international market, a lot of investors would see the Philippines as a risky investment based on their standards. But because the diaspora, no, yung mga migrants natin, they are able to, they know what's happening in the Philippines at strong yung ties doon. So for example, kahit na maraming mga maraming mga insurgencies sa Mindanao, for example, a migrant from say Zamboanga or Sulu, ganyan, no, na nasa ibang bansa, pagpapadala pa rin yan para magtayo ng business yung kanilang mga kamag-anak doon. Kasi nga yung perception sa risk ay mas mababa. There's home bias. Taga doon ako eh. Kailangan kong ibigay ito whether or not nagkakaroon ng insurgency dyan kasi kailangan akong tumulong sa mga kamag-anak ko sa Philippines. And that's the reason why I went abroad. So, yun yung tinitignan, no? Kasi when you compare it with FDIs, lalong-lalo na FDIs, kaya makikita ninyo wala masyadong mga economic zones in a lot of the insurgency areas ng Pilipinas dahil may mataas yung risk sa tingin nila doon. Okay? Counter-cyclical din, no? Sa home country, unemployment is high. Sa host country usually ay low. At kapag kunwari, kapag maganda ang ekonomiya ng Pilipinas, usually mababa ang remittances. Pero kapag nagkaroon ng disaster, usually lumalakas ang remittances. Kasi doon tayo mas nangangailangan. Kaya ang sinasabi sa kanya, it is counter cyclical. Okay? Pero medyo extraordinary itong sa itong sa pandemic natin. Kahit na nagkaroon ng lahat tayo tinamaan. So nag-dip din yung ating remittance flows. Pero right now ay bumabawi na ulit. Okay? So yun. And then higher during periods of inflation yung remittances. So kasi bakit? Yung exchange rate kasi kapag mataas ang inflation, usually ay mas maraming na-exchange into the local currency. Kaya lumalakas din yung remittances during times of high inflation in a receiving country. Okay? So, ano pa yung natin, nakikita natin dito. Remittances is often described as a new form of development aid kasi nga mas developmental siya, no? As I mentioned a while ago, diretso kasi siya sa mga low income groups. Okay? And it is now recognized as the biggest source of foreign inflows. In fact, kapag nagre-report ang central bank natin, 'di ba, lagi niyang sinasabi na we have very good foreign reserves because of the healthy inflow of migrant remittances to the Philippines. Okay? Tapos, it's a potential tool for poverty reduction, and the impact of remittances is more tangible in poor rural areas. Ayan. Ayan. So, si Jana actually, can I just read this? Sabi ni Jana, grabe, baon na tayo sa utang. Apo natin may utang pa. Ayan. I think yan yung pinag-usapan natin kasi kanina regarding debt relief, no? Totoo naman yan, Joanne, no? Joanne ba yung pangalan? Jana. Okay. Sa totoo lang, as I've heard, no, we are operating on 3 budgets right now. 3 budget ang pinapa-iral natin ngayon. Isa, yung 2020 budget na hindi natin naubos. May Bayanihan 1 at Bayanihan 2 na mga budgets. Ang dami-daming pera, but because of the inefficiencies in our government bureaucracy, hindi siya ipapalabas agad-agad. So 3 yung source ng pera natin ngayong taon na to, ngayong 2021. So may Bayanihan 1 and 2, mayroong 2020 budget, tapos yung 2021 budget ngayon. No? Lahat yan ay gagastusin dapat ng gobyerno. Pero dahil nga inefficient tayo in spending, dahil natatakot sa corruption, nag-iingat ang lahat, mga ganyan mabagal, ay hindi nakakarating yung dapat na serbisyo sa mga mamamayan. So dapat, ang gagawin talaga natin is to strengthen our institutions so that they become more efficient. Kasi baliktad yung sa government side, ang measurement ng success nila ay kung gaano sila kagaling gumasta para sa mga proyekto na makikinabang ang sambayanan, no? So, mabilis ba sila magpatayo ng mga schools, bridges, daan, public transportation, pag-upgrade ng medical facilities natin, yan yung measurement niya. Pero sa household, 'di ba? Tayo kasi hindi spending ang ating measurement, income, baliktad naman, 'di ba? So, yun tama yung iyong observation, Jana. Okay. So, remittances, yung pinag-uusapan natin, no? So, sa tingin niyo, Jana, Jerica, and Yani, ano yung mga positive outcomes of remittances?
Sir?
Yes. Sige, Yani muna.
Madaming positibong outcomes from remittances. Like let's say, for example, yung pumapasok na dolyar sa atin, nakakatulong yan sa bansa. Kasi pag kino-convert yan sa peso, yun, malaking sum of money na yun na makakatulong sa mga tao. Other is, pag bumabalik yung some of our skilled workers, nagkakaroon rin tayo ng brain gain doon. So parang kunwari bumalik ang isang engineer from Saudi Arabia, makakatulong rin siya in applying yung mga natutunan niya sa Saudi Arabia.
Right.
Madami rin nakaka-develop na communities. Like, meron ako narinig na isang story na isang domestic helper sa United States. Nagpadala siya ng pera sa kanyang communities and ngayon nakaaral na yung mga bata or nakabili sila ng supplies, bagong sapatos, mga bagong bag, mga pera pang uniform. So,
Right.
bago nagkaroon ng pandemic, nakatulong yun sa community nila.
Okay,
Yeah.
sige. So thank you for that Yani. So tingnan natin yung iba pang mga positive impact ng ating remittances. Okay. So may potential talaga siya for poverty reduction gaya nga ng sinabi mo kasi may may emotional connection eh. Parang sa totoo lang na-observe ko sa third generation nawawala talaga yung parang connection ng mga diaspora dun sa kanilang home country. Kasi for example, yung sister ko is first generation na pumunta. Yung mga pamangkin ko ay meron pa sila talagang connection kasi they grew up here pa up to a certain parang yung 4 years old and 6 years old. Pero pag doon na pinanganak yung mga diaspora, doon nagkakaroon ng problema sa connection at usually doon napuputol yung remittances, no? So households are more secure with higher incomes, no, because of this. So may nagagamit yan to help improve merong improvement in health and nutrition. So yung natin dito ang sinasabi yung kita, no? Lumalaki talaga with the same skill set. Like say for example, nurses, katulad nga ng mga kapatid ko, pag sila yung nag-nurse dito, bagong nurse, no? Pag bagong nurse, usually ang mga nurses dito sa Pilipinas, bagong work ay sila pa yung nagbabayad dahil sa training, di ba? Kasi ang system dito sa Pilipinas, dahil napakadami nating supply ng nurses at ang career path talaga ng mga nurses ay papunta abroad. Ang ginagawa ng mga hospitals, lalo na mga private hospitals, training ground yung hospital namin. Kailangan mo kami nurse because itong experience na ibibigay ko sa iyo, makakount yan para ikaw ay makapag-abroad. So, yung kinikita nila usually sa training, halos wala, no? Volunteers yung mga yan. And then nagiging sila, minimum wage. And minimum wage is about 11,500 pesos here at the NCR. Pero kapag yung isang nurse ay nagtrabaho abroad, say pumunta siya ng Saudi, no? Saudi is already about 50 to 60,000 pesos per month. So it's already 5 to 6 times higher compared doon sa kikitain dito. And if you go to the UK, Canada, Australia, the US, it's even higher, no? Usually sila parang they start with $15 per hour. Per hour 'yon ha. Hindi siya per day. So parang umaabot ng mga for a new nurse sa kanila is umaabot ng mga $4,000 to $6,000 per month. Diba? So, ang sad lang, no? Tapos ngayong pandemic, ang nangyari ay, oh my God, una, hindi kayang mag-hire ng ating government ng napakaraming nurses na pwede sanang makatulong sa care ng ating mga tinatamaan ng COVID ngayon, no? Especially in the communities. Kasi tingin ko, yung mga mild cases, which is the majority, di ba? Tsaka mga moderate cases na tinitreat at home, kayang-kaya yan na i-manage sana kung marami tayong mga nurses na nagbabahay-bahay. Pero nasaan sila ngayon? They're serving the world, no? Instead na tayo. So, yun. Pero na-digress ako. But it really produces higher incomes. And with that, yung higher income, nakakapagpadala sila dito and that translates to better nutrition and better health. Okay? Investment for future security also, hindi nyo pala nakikita, sorry. Ayan. Investment for future security and also for employment or entrepreneurial opportunities. So yung receiving households ay pwede nilang gamitin yan pang negosyo. Tapos nagkakaroon ng spillover to the local economy. Okay? And then children are also able to complete schooling and what else? No? Yung mga po pwede nilang makuha dyan. Nagkakaroon ng higher final incomes. Kasi dati, kung hindi siya nag-abroad, hindi makakapag-aral yung kanyang kapatid, yung kanyang kung sino man, kamag-anak. So, lower productivity in the community. Pero kapag nakapag-aral siya, higher skill set, higher knowledge base, mas may chance to have gainful employment. So those are the positive outcomes of remittances. How about the negative outcomes of remittances? Ano naman yung mga negative outcomes natin? Who wants to answer?
Sir, di ko pala na-realize na may mga negative effects ng
Hindi mo na-realize? Bakit naman? Marami, di ba? Hindi mo ba napanood yung kay Claudine Barreto, anak? Na, oh my God, sobrang I'm so sorry. Sige. Si Jerica ba is raising her hand or si John?
Sige,
Yeah.
sir. I can answer po. Well, for one, nagkakaroon ng culture of dependency. Kasi yun nga, parang I think the tendency is since alam natin na higher yung na-earn sa ibang bansa, we depend so much on our relatives who work abroad. And then yun nga po, sa anak, yung movie na yun, I guess one negative outcome of remittances is yun nga, families are apart and it reduces like the emotional connection that families have with each other. Kaya nagkaroon ng resentment, parang resentment si Claudine kay dun. Yun po.
Okay, tama naman ano. So, yun yung mga sinasabi natin ng mga social cost of migration. So, the danger also of remittances is dependency, no? So, dependency of households and also dependency of national government. Actually, ang binabato nga usually ay, 'di ba, parang bakit ginagawang polisiya ng gobyerno ang pagpapadala ng Pilipino abroad? Na bakit niya ginagawa yon? Dahil kulang ang economic opportunities dito, employment opportunities, at kapag nag-abroad yan, malaki pa yung kinikita. So, hindi rin maganda. So, it could cause dependence, no? Yun, ganun din sa households. Diba? Yung iba parang tinatamad na or namimili ng trabaho dahil nandiyan naman si mami, nandiyan naman si ate, magbibigay ng padala every month. Okay? Tapos, meron ding lack of employment causing over-migration. So, food insecurity and labor market implications. So, may mga times na mahirap mag-scout ng talents, lalong-lalo na sa gobyerno, parang hindi masyadong nagpupunta ang mga talented Filipinos sa gobyerno dahil nga competition ay abroad. Mas rewarding economically pagpunta abroad kaysa sa pagtatrabaho sa gobyerno or sa private sector dito sa Pilipinas. Okay? Another one is inter-household and community inequality. Actually, na-observe yan sa isang town in Molino, Batangas yata. Na talagang na-show nila yung nagkakaroon ng disparity ng mga haves, those who have, yung mga haves and have-nots sa community. Dahil yung mga may OFW na mga kamag-anak ay mas kaya nilang bumili, so mas maayos yung kanilang kanilang pamumuhay versus dun sa mga families na wala. And it fuels inflation na negatively dahil yung mga previously mga tao na nakaka-afford ng mga say real estate, no, pagbili ng bukid doon sa kanila, hindi na nila ma-afford dahil nai-inflate ng mga OFWs na maraming pera. So dati, nabibili mo ang isang ektarya ng lupa sa Molino ng let's say 200,000 pesos per hectare. Ngayon, mabibili mo na siya ng 2 million dahil kayang magbayad ng mga OFWs ng 2 million pesos to the detriment of those who could not afford it. So parang nagkakaroon ng inequality. Yung Gini coefficient natin ay mas nagwa-widen. Okay? And then there's also exchange rate distortions. Pero in the Philippine experience, mas nasa-stabilize niya yung exchange rate natin dahil nga steady yung inflow ng foreign reserves natin. Okay? So, ayan, dito na tayo sa financial behavior of OFWs. Okay. So, you've mentioned kanina na you did your own research in terms of the financial behavior of OFWs. So, can you tell me what you found out? wants to go?
Sir, yung una kong na-research, sir, is that most of these are fueled by familial relationships nga that we mentioned na karamihan talaga na sending to their families talaga in small communities. And usually, remittances are sent through bank services and a small amount through money transfer and through agency services. So usually yung channels, yung what I've researched, sir, is that yung ratio ng channels to send money is through bank accounts or through bank services.
Okay. So what else?
There is also an opportunity to shift to digital banking when it comes to remittances, because a lot of OFWs have smartphones naman and are very what you call this, knowledgeable when it comes to technology. So that's something that a lot of financial institutions are looking into.
Yan, yeah, that's correct. Ano? Kasi ang dami na ngayon na mga digital platforms, mga fintechs are available for that. Okay, how about you, John? Did you find out anything?
I'm not really sure, sir, but I'm not sure. But di pa ako nabalitaan sa tito ko, so I'm not sure.
Okay, sige. So ito yung ano, no? Ito yung financial behavior ng mga overseas Filipino workers. And we've been doing our research for, I think, a good 15 years, 16 years now, since 2004. So ginagawa namin ito every year at ito yung pinaka-latest, no, na research natin on the financial behavior of OFWs. So in terms of financial planning ng mga overseas Filipino workers, ito yung nakita ng SEDP na practices nila, no? So mostly not written, no? Yung mga OFWs, ang financial plan nila, sabi nila, oh, it's in my head, di ba? But that's not the proper way of doing financial planning. Dapat ito ay nakasulat at malinaw kung ano yung mga strategies and priorities. Okay? Tapos, unclear din yung mga priorities nila. So, usually kapag tinatanong mo sila, actually pag nagtatanong sila, they would ask, Sir Vince, ano bang magandang investment? Usually, yan yung itatanong nila. No? So, sasabihin ko naman na, alam mo, parang kulang yung tanong eh. Hindi tama na ano ba yung magandang investment. Dapat kailangan mong sinasabi sa akin, ano ba yung purpose mo dun sa investment na yan. Kasi when you ask me, for example, kapag nag-ask ka ng advice about investment and you don't give me the purpose, it's like asking the doctor, sabi mo, okay po bang mag chemotherapy? Pero hindi alam kung ano yung sakit mo. Diba? So kailangan alam ng doktor kung ano yung purpose, no? Kailangan may lab tests muna, kailangan ay may check up muna, tapos magkakaroon ng diagnosis and then recommendation. So ganun din sa investment. So dahil unclear yung priorities nila, walang written financial plans. Doon nagkakagulo. Gusto lang nila na kasi basta sabihin mo sa akin anong magandang investment. Pero that's not the point. The point is we have to match investments with our goals. So, kailangan mag-start muna sa goals. So, yung tito mo John, tanong mo, tito, bakit ka ba nag-abroad? Yun yung usually pinag-uugatan ng goal. Bakit sila nag-abroad? Tapos from there, aalamin natin kung ano yung magandang investment, no, for them. Okay? And then they also attempt to accomplish multiple goals at the same time. So pinagsasabay-sabay nila yan. Magpaaral ng anak, magtayo ng business, magtayo ng bahay, magbayad ng utang, sabay-sabay. Kaya natatagalan sila abroad, no? Tapos actually pag kunwari ang original na plan ay okay, para mag-abroad ako para makapagtapos sa kolehiyo yung ating anak, no? Nagtapos na sa kolehiyo yung anak, nag-iba na yung kanilang goal. Pag-aralin naman ng kanilang mga apo. Hindi forever na talaga silang nasa abroad. Yan. Okay? Tapos, usually, yun, single source of income, yung pinanggagalingan. And they try to solve everything with, to achieve all the multiple goals that they have with a single source of income. So yan yung nakita natin in terms of financial planning. Savings habit naman ng OFWs, no? So savings habit ng OFWs, about half of our migrants say that they save, but only 1 out of 5 actually have adequate emergency savings. Pero in fairness naman sa kanila, this is already an improvement, no? Kasi 10 years ago, 1 out of 10 lang yung may adequate emergency savings. Pero ngayon, it's already 1 out of 5. So magandang balita yon. Mas nagsisave na ang ating mga OFWs ngayon. Pero ganun pa rin, no? 50% yung nagsasabi na akala nila they have enough emergency savings, but they actually don't. Okay? 20% lang. Okay, what else? They prepare budgets, but the budget is focused mainly on immediate consumption. So kung ano yung pera ko ngayon, no, kinita ko, papunta yan pagkain, renta, transportation, pag-aaral, ganyan. So hindi nagkakaroon ng conscious budgeting for insurance, investments, and savings, no, which is actually very important. Dapat itong mga tatlong to ay nauuna kaysa dun sa mga consumption or spending. Okay? And then very little is budgeted for savings and investments. Okay? Hindi din naman natin sila masisi dahil nga the major goal of OFWs is to improve the standard of living of their families here in the Philippines. Gusto nilang maiahon sila sa kahirapan. Pero for me, mayroong tamang paraan ng paggawa nun. Sa akin, ang rule ko para sa mga OFWs, yung income abroad ay para yan sa mga financial goals na malalaki. Tapos yung dapat meron pa rin income dito sa Philippines at yung income from the Philippines would sustain the needs, no? Mga pagkain, ilaw, kuryente, dapat kaya yan ng income dito sa Pilipinas. Para pag bumalik yung nasa abroad, kaya pa rin yung lifestyle. Yan. So why OFW save less? Because of what I call or what I termed newfound wealth shock. Diba? Imagine kanina yung sinasabi ko sa inyo, a nurse that would have 11,500 pesos as income here in the Philippines, tapos nagpunta siya ng US, magiging 250,000 pesos per month or 200,000 pesos per month. Ang laki masyado. So, newfound wealth shock, ang dami masyado, so palabas ang pera. Okay? Family pressure to help extended family members. Diba? Lahat, ganyan tayo dito sa Pilipinas. Extended family members ang nangyayari. At nagkakaroon ka ng mas maraming kamag-anak kapag ikaw ay OFW. Alam na alam yan ng mga OFWs natin. And then, seeing negative emotions when deciding on financial matters. So, takot, anger, guilt, envy, and shame. Ito yung mga emotions. So usually, what I say is when you decide on financial matters, dapat talaga iniiwasan natin to use our emotions because the tendency is we come up with very bad financial decisions. Okay? Sa mga loans naman, OFWs borrow mostly for consumption. And madami sa mga countries na nabibigyan sila ng credit card, nagkakaroon ng credit card mismanagement. And they also borrow too much money against future income. So marami actually ang mga nabibiktima nito na parang once nag-OFW sila, akala nila ay forever na ganon yung kita, no? Na hindi magsasara ang kumpanya, walang masamang mangyayari, ganyan. Tapos biglang nagka-pandemic. So kalahating milyong mga Pilipino ang napauwi dito sa Pilipinas ng mga OFWs at nawala ang kanilang kita. Pero yung mga yan, nakapangutang, bumili ng condominium dito sa Pilipinas, pag-uwi dito sa Pilipinas, nawalan ng trabaho, so double whammy kasi yung naipundar nila doon sa condominium ay hindi na nila kayang mabawi, tapos mafo-foreclose na. So yung napag-ipunan nila, nawala, at saka at the same time, wala pa silang income dito sa Pilipinas. So, it's masaklap siya. And when we teach OFWs on financial literacy, this is what we actually tell them. Imagine kung ano ang mangyayari sa'yo kung bukas mawalan ka ng trabaho. So I let them imagine that. And kapag na-imagine nila yon, parang, oh my God, ano pala, no? Parang napaka-vulnerable pala ng situation. Wala akong emergency savings, wala akong investments, and meron pa akong utang. So, doon sila nagigising. Okay? And on investments naman, they are attracted to get rich quick schemes. So, yan yung mga maraming nakikita natin sa mga OFWs. Kasi siguro, ang tingin ko dito ay baka talagang pagod na sila sa kahirapan at gusto lang talaga nila ng maayos na buhay. Pero, yun nga, they need to improve on their financial literacy skills para maiwasan yung pagiging biktima ng scam. So, marami sa kanila ay nabibiktima ng scam dahil gustong nag-aapura nga to improve their lives. Okay? And then they also focus on their profession and then less on investments. So, parang nakakalimutan nila mag-invest. Parang galing-galing ko na engineer, ang galing-galing ko na doctor, but I forget about investing. Kaya nagkakaroon din ng problema in the long run. Okay? So, there's a need to escape, ayun, gaya ng sabi ko kanina, there's need to escape poverty fast. Okay? So, just to connect kanina, no, yung sinasabi natin na remittances and migration, at saka yung international finance flows nga. So this is our SEDP social investment model 2020 to present. So nagsimula tayo 2009 to 2013, 2014 to 2019. Tapos last year which also changed our mode of delivering this kasi because of the pandemic. Okay? So yung dati may guarantee, no? And then we do face-to-face. Ngayon ay hindi na kami nagpe-face-to-face for obvious reasons, no? Because of the pandemic. But what we do now is we provide financial literacy programs to micro enterprises. So yung YouTube channel ko at saka yung Facebook natin, they reach out to micro enterprises. And then we also have our microfinance operations in Mindanao. So we have 9 branches there. Tapos natuturuan yung mga nanay, no, mga micro enterprises natin on financial literacy. Tapos we also still assist ng mga microfinance institutions and social enterprises. Tapos ito ngayon, yung mga training natin na binibigay sa mga OFWs and social investors, these are all online now. So ang nangyari, before, pero sayang sa inyo, no? Kung face-to-face ito, you would have loved me in our class kasi maraming times na ako ay absent. dahil I usually go abroad and train overseas Filipinos. So ang ginagawa ko ay shorten namin yung semester. So nagme-makeup class para bumilis dahil nga marami akong trips abroad. So, dati gagastos pa kami ng malaki to go abroad and makaka-reach out tayo siguro ng mga maswerte na yung mga in one trip I would be able to reach out to about 200 to 300 overseas Filipinos. Ngayon, by going online through our online platform, we are able to reach thousands, no? And hindi lang mga OFWs, maski yung mga nandito sa Pilipinas ay nakikinabang na rin, no? So, yun. And with that, we're able to mobilize our investments. So, ang nangyayari ngayon, we have our financing company. If you see it there, ayan, dito, pakita natin. So, the financing company provides capital to the institutions and also to the micro enterprises. Okay? And then, nagkakaroon ng establishment ng joint venture, okay, with the micro enterprises. And we go into joint ventures kasi ayaw na namin ng interest-based delivery of services. Gusto namin ay equal, hindi yung creditor kami tapos debtor yung mga micro enterprises. We want to be equal business partners. That's why it's a joint venture. So we share in the profits and the losses. So ganun yung system na ginagawa natin. Kasi kapag creditor-debtor relationship, kahit bankrupt na si debtor, the creditor will still go after the debtor. Yung mga debtor natin, mga micro-enterprises, mahihirap. So if we go after them kapag nag-fail yung business nila, they become poorer. And that goes against our mission. Okay? Tapos, pag tinitignan mo, parang counterintuitive siya. Kasi parang, oh no, edi kung ganyan, sir, baka madali kayong takbuhan. On the contrary, kami yung pinaprioritize dahil nga ang tingin namin sa kanila ay business partners. Hindi sila mangungutang sa amin. And that shift in paradigm gave us above industry repayment rates or recovery rates compared to other financial institutions in the Philippines. Ayan. So to continue, so ngayon ang ginagawa namin itong mga migrants, we mobilize from them, no? So joint venture din, no? So nagkakaroon din ng joint venture with another entity, ang SEDP Social Enterprise Ventures. And with this entity naman, nagkakaroon ng joint venture para yung mga migrants ay talagang investor sila, so hindi rin kami creditor-debtor relationship, no? Kapag nagkaroon ng losses doon sa mga pinagpaglalagyan natin ng mga social investments, they absorb the losses. But kung mayroong gain, ay mayroon ding gain. So yan yung formula. Okay? So with that, we push the social investment to the financing company that becomes a source of capital to the social enterprises and the micro and small enterprises. So yan yung joint venture na pinakita natin kanina. And magbibigay ngayon ng preferred shares yung financing company sa SEDP Social Enterprise Ventures. Tapos yung profits will go and the profits, may yung sharing ng profits and losses ay mapupunta sa mga migrants. Okay? So it's become more sophisticated as we grew, no, as an institution. So sana nakikita ninyo yung movement ng international finance flows and how we're able to use remittances to harness remittances for the development of our local economy. Yan. So ito yung financial resources namin, ano? If you take a look at this. So nagsimula kami 2004 to 2008, usually to 2007, usually ay pera lang namin muna ito, no? 2008 to 2013, makikita nyo yung green na maliit. That's the Cord Aid Fund that provided us guarantee. So 2008, 2009, wala pa masyadong na-attract, no, na mga social investments. Pero makikita nyo na pumipick up siya. But if you observe it, ang mas na-attract talaga na funds ay funds coming from the banks, which is the blue bar. Okay? And if you take a look at this, in 2016, yun yung may pinakamalaking part ng leverage natin from banks. But right now, dahil nga ang ginagawa natin ay we want to move away from debt, no, as a mode of development, but more on equity, which is a profit sharing. Kaya makikita nyo sa 2020 yung orange double siya, di ba? If I show you, so this one, 2019, ganito lang siya kalaki. It went up to half, no, in 2020. So, mas madami na yung social investments from migrants and from Filipinos na nakukuha natin ngayon. And we're replacing the money that we get from banks with the social investments because we think that is more sustainable. Okay? So, yan yung so bootstrapping kami 2004 to 2009. Ano ibig sabihin ng bootstrapping? Sariling pera. Pero ay mahirap pala pag sariling pera lang. You have to leverage it, no? 2010 to 2016 ay debt-driven growth, no? And I don't like that anymore. It's good, no, na meron lang line pero hindi siya maganda na utang mainly yung growth driver ng inyong enterprise. So 2017 to 2019, we had our retooling and re-strategizing kasi sabi namin, okay, I'd like to bring down our debt from the commercial banks because yun nga creditor and debtor relationship. We want a relationship where we absorb the risks and the losses together, because the banks wouldn't do that. They will only want the profits. They don't want the risks. Okay? So, noong 2020, last year, we focused on social investments, and that's the reason why lumaki siya ng gano'n. Okay? So, how are we now based on our performance? So, ang na-mobilize na ay 80 million in social investments. In 2019, this was only 30 million. So, because of the pandemic, nagkaroon ng positive impact na lower yung cost in delivering financial literacy. We were able to reach more migrants and Filipinos. More were investing in us. So, naging 80 million siya. So, we used that money to pay off the banks. Okay? So yung bank loans natin ay down to 90 million na lang, and our goal is to eliminate our bank loans by next year, no? Fingers crossed, no? 2022. Ayan. So I hope you enjoyed our discussion for tonight na and I think this is really the technique of Ateneo in terms of choosing instructors. Ang mga pinipili talaga nila ay yung may karanasan. So, para yung mga tsorya na nababasa natin sa libro o sa mga articles natin ay mas buhay kapag itinuturo sa inyo. So, I hope that you got that. Okay ba? Ha?
Okay na ako, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Akala ko nag-talk na kayo. Ayan. So, any last words that you want to, ano ba yung mga naging realizations nyo with your assignment? Ano yung mga napag-aralan ninyo na tingin nyo relevant in your life right now?
Ako para sa akin, sir, na posible talaga na ma-decentralize talaga yung wealth with the help of institutions like SEDP. Tapos, parang nakamangha rin yung ganon. Kasi bakit wala masyadong tao nakaalam na ito gawin natin? Bakit hindi mas madami yung versions ng SEDP or walang mga institutions like SEDP? So, sana sir, ma-spread pa yung yung structure na ginawa nyo with SEDP to other institutions na maka-develop ng mga ganyan. Kasi napakaganda talaga na pwede pala yun, social investments, pwede pala yun, sustainable pala yun. So, cool lang siya. So.
Yeah, okay. So, happy naman ako at Yani, na nai-inspire ka. And I hope, isa to lang sinasabi ko, no? In doing my class in Ateneo, parang sinasabi ko, kung mayroon lang akong isa o dalawang estudyante na magpunta sa development world at mag-pursue nito after, sobrang happy ko na. So, kung ikaw, Yani, would be interested in this, maganda ang career sa sa development world. Magpunta ng Asian Development Bank, sa World Bank, and you can actually also put up your own if you like. So, maganda na nai-inspire, and I hope you use that kahit hindi sa field na ito, no, when whatever you do afterwards, you use this learning to be more humane, no, in your approach in doing business or doing your work. Yeah. Okay. How about si Yani? Ay, Jerica pala, sorry.
Yeah. Ako po, sir, well, as a management student, because I've only been exposed sa mga entrepreneurial activities na very business centered, like income goes to the company only. Well, not that that's bad, but parang this session gave me hope na parang you can be the meron parang tinatawag na parang social entrepreneurship na your heart is not just for the for your company but also for other people. So I'm happy na meron ganitong mga institutions that have these goals. So yun, and put people at the center. So yeah.
Yeah, oo. Actually, Jerica, no? So I also graduated management in Ateneo like you. You will be graduating, no? And actually, after graduation, ang sabi ko parang, alam mo yun, parang I was challenging to the creator. At sabi ko sa kanya parang, oy, kung wala pa akong makikitang work na na may development perspective, tatanggapin ko na yung offer ng corporate sector. Kasi I was really dreading going to the corporate sector kasi nasubukan ko nag-internship ako with the bank. Sabi ko, oh no, hindi mamamatay ako dito sa ganito. Parang I need meaning. And fortunately, I was able to find one in the development world. At believe me, Jericho, when I say na your skill set as a management graduate is very, very much needed in the development world. So yung mga ginagawa natin ng mga marketing plans, mga strategic plans, mga financial projections, oh my God, sobrang useful niyan doon. So ako, I just got to learn about how to make this very traditional business tools and knowledge para i-translate siya into the development para makatulong sa kapwa. At kayang-kaya yon. And actually, ang sabi ko nga sa School of Management, sana gawin na ang talagang branding ng Ateneo Management Education ay social entrepreneurship. To make social entrepreneurship the standard of doing business, no? For here in the Philippines. Yeah. Okay? So, si John naman.
Sir, for me, like the dynamics of like loans and grants and very similar financial flows, they're a lot more complex than I initially thought. But that doesn't mean they have to be super intimidating. Like you can also understand them on more personal contexts, and also like sir, you making like learning about this more accessible. So it's not as far away or like very scary concepts po.
Yeah. Okay. Actually, yan naman yung intention talaga, no? At the end of the day, sa totoo lang, when kapag nag-uusap kaming mga professors in the university, nag-uusap kami, ang lagi ko lang sinasagot ang lagi ko lang sinasabi ay, basta gusto ko yung mga estudyante ko, they would remember me after graduation and something practical yung maaalala na nila sa akin. Nung sabi ni Sir Vince ay wag pa lang mag-guarantee, no? Agad-agad. Dapat pag-isipan. Di ba, Yani? Sabi ko sa iyo. Tapos kay Jerica naman, dapat pala ay pupwede na may social dimension. At kailangan pala yung skill set ko as this management graduate sa development world. At kay Joanne naman ay sabihin niya, okay, dapat pala ay tatanungin ko ang aking tito, ano ba yung kanyang reason, bakit siya nag-abroad? Diba? So, practical things, because that's what really matter, no, when you graduate. Okay? So, maraming salamat sa inyong tatlo for joining me this evening. I think nag-overtime tayo, no? Kasi ang lively ng ating discussion. Baka gusto nyong batiin ang inyong mga kamag-anak. Alam ko yung parents or mga kamag-anak friends inyo nanonood ngayon. Ayan.
Hi, Mom.
Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad. Hello. Thank you for allowing your children to be exposed in the real world. Ayan. Okay, so let me end this. So babay na muna ako sa inyo, ha? Ayan. Okay, so ayan po, nakita natin ang aming discussion with my students in Ateneo at pinag-usapan natin ang guarantees, debt relief at ang financial behavior ng OFWs at kung paano nakakatulong ang remittances sa ating lahat. So ako po si Sir Vince, nagsasabing ang pagyaman na pag-aaralan at napagtutulungan.